Hello everyone. This is the first time I'm ever going to be speaking about this topic, and this is an unpopular opinion. But I believe that cancel culture distorts the truth and devalues what is real. I know that the gurus of cancel culture are going to hate me for this, but here goes. So what is cancel culture? So I read an article entitled What Cancel Culture Is by Opto Dolakian, PhD, from Psychology Today. Canceling is a complex individual act that spreads to groups that can cause harm. And the Cambridge Dictionary offers another example, which states that cancel culture is our way to exert some control over a world that is increasingly becoming more dangerous and less tolerant. I'm going to share a quote that was also mentioned this past Sunday at church during the service by Reverend Robbie Mitchell. And he was our guest speaker, and it goes like this: truth sounds like hate to those who hate to hear the truth. So before I go full into the word, I also want to say that one unmistakable evidence of cancel culture is also the way people throw tantrums in public places when they don't get a quick response to what they think is true, or when they don't receive instant gratification, whatever they're wanting, so they act out. So what are the biblical lessons comparative to the cancel culture behaviors of this present time? I was reading John 8, verse 32. Jesus told the Pharisees, "And you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free, shall make you free." In John 8, we learned that Jesus was engaged in an exchange of dialogues with the Pharisee, who so happened to be antagonizing him by trying to discredit what he was telling them. You see, they were the cancel culture of those days, and no matter how much of the law they knew, they still could not see the truth that was standing right in front of them. When Jesus stated, "Before Abraham was I am," that threw the Pharisees into a hissy fit, and their reaction was an act of enragement towards Jesus. And they went as far as to point and referring to Jesus as a Samaritan or having a demon. They hated the truth because they hated to hear the truth, because that meant that they must be accountable to their sins. You see, they felt untouchable and self-proclaimed righteous people because of what they knew. Jesus counteracted the cancel culture with poise and respect. Although the conversations became extremely heated, it was evident that the Pharisees were acting on their emotions and lack of spiritual awareness that Jesus, the Son of God, was right there in their presence. The Pharisees wanted to be right no matter what the cost was. In verse 59, then they took up stone to throw at him, but Jesus hid himself and went out of the temple, going through the midst of them, and so passed by. Pay close attention to that. Jesus plainly, right before their eyes, went right through them in peace, and they did not even notice him. John 9, verse 13. The Pharisees, still not believing that Jesus was the Son of God, drilled the blind man and his family in an attempt to distort the truth of his healing. In verse 24, they commanded the blind man to give God the glory as a declaration of that whole truth. But they were also attempting to put words in the blind man's mouth to distort the truth and say that Jesus was a sinner. The evidence was that the blind man, who also testified Jesus as the truth, and his healing was the evidence of it, as there was no recorded healing of a blind man in the Old Testament. This is an example as to what extent people go to distort the truth and to not believe in the truth. The Pharisees' cancel culture believed that they knew what was true, even with the evidence of the blind man's healing. Now, let's apply it to our culture today. In the very same manner, people act with strong conviction when it comes to what they believe to be true. Why? Because it's easier to go with the crowd, especially when you have a bunch of people backing you. Then it may seem like the truth because they all believe on the same things, or they may just be blind to the truth because they too join the bandwagon that conveniently distorts the truth. The problem is not the cancel culture itself, but what they are believing as truth, because their truth has become distorted. Somehow the seed that has been planted at home, school, environment, etc., no one has ever been strong enough to stand up to correct them in time before they grew deep-seated roots, which now have sprouted and spread like wild vines. Whose fault is it? I am not sure. I'm not here to point fingers, but to highlight that their mentality has already been thwarted, in which they demand respect but fail to give it. They exclaim that they're right, but fail to honor God's truth. In Romans 1 verse 28, and just as they did not see fit to acknowledge God, God gave them to a depraved mind to do those things that are not proper. We need to pray more for this cancel culture, that their veils will be lifted and that they will repent and see God's truth. God bless.